we've been doing very well in Teams and Pearls, all these hosted by IEA for quite a long time. So why bother? Why bother any reform at all? I'll rush through this very quickly by typical Hong Kong speed. 1999, we faced comprehensive dissatisfactions. Teachers are dissatisfied with their students, parents are dissatisfied with the schools, and the employers are dissatisfied with the employees, local graduates. Despite our attempts, numerous recommendations, 6 Education Commission reforms since 1986. So we decided to look at what should be done and what has to be done. There are 3 dimensions of that. One is the structure. We actually changed the whole structure from a very British system, 5 years secondary, 2 years matriculation, and 3 years higher education, to 3 + 3 + 4. This is going to complete next year. To start next year, 2012. We will start the first batch coming to our 4-year program. The crux of the reform is curriculum. It was changing from the subjects to what we call key learning areas. That is, compress the subjects into key learning areas, leave room for other learning experiences based on our understanding of learning, and also assessment. Assessment of learning to assessment for learning. I'll explain that later. It all started in 1999. The first thing we did was to organize a gathering like this, 800 community leaders from town, not from Gaon, and try to inspire them. I was the one who made the presentation. It's 25 minutes, all questions, no statement. So the whole gathering boiled and urged us to reform. And then we tried to mobilize the schools. Every school there's a tree, there's a paper tree. And the students will hang on the tree one small tag. I have a dream. Education should be up to them. And we received about 40,000 responses from the whole territory, which is a very small place. All right? And that is aims of education. We didn't know what to do at that time. What we only knew was that we couldn't get on like this. Year 2000, we have the first framework called Learning for Life, Learning Through Life. 2001, there's a first curriculum document, Learning to Learn. And then in 2003, it's rather slow in the step. We have a teacher reform document called Towards the Learning Profession. You see here that everything is surrounding around learning. And I say learning is not education, it's not instruction, it's not study, it's not schooling, it's learning. So when Dan introduced me, the kind of strategic research theme in my own university is sciences of learning, not sciences of education. Okay. And then we have a long lead time. The curriculum actually started, the senior secondary curriculum started in 2009, and we started from 2005, a very meticulous school by school, group by group preparation of the schools for the reform, because the subjects change to key learning areas, the teachers have to change their identity, which is very, very fundamental. I'll tell you later if I have time. The new curriculum started in 2009, and next year there will be our D-Day. There will be new assessment after secondary schools and new university entrance and the new university curriculum. All universities have to change to, not to have to, they all opted to change to 1-year foundation and then not adding to the special knowledge. Fundamental to our thinking is we are not doing more and better of what we are doing. This is what we call improvement. This is not reform. Reform is doing it differently for a good reason. And that is perhaps why the reform sustains over the past 12 years. The underpinning, I'll run through even quicker. There are 2 dimensions of underpinning. First, macro is a change in society. In all the earlier documents and all the preparatory sessions for schools, the first title on the document is Society Has Changed. And the first talk in all these school preparation seminars, they are in a hotel for 2 days, 12 schools, 6 representatives from each school. The first talk is from somebody from town. Society has changed. The second is our new understanding about learning. Society has changed and is still changing, and education has to be different. That is our fundamental assumption. So in hindsight, what we have done in the past 11 years, very overhauling for educators. When you compare what we have to do to catch up with society, they are just minute small steps towards a long journey. Nonetheless, when we ask ourselves, is our education preparing them for these? We have no answer. Yes, maybe, but it's not core of our business. So what are we doing? Underpinning two is about learning, a new understanding of learning, and redefining learning as the core business of education. That is, we have to think about using learning as a lens and look at education, all aspects of education. Are we really doing learning? Should be different. This is common to you, perhaps, or again, common sense to educators. Learning is as knowledge construction rather than knowledge transmission. Learning from experience, learning by doing, and so on and so forth. The application and understanding is intertwined. Learning as an individual undertaking, that is, it's like in Shanghai, they say it's like eating. You can't eat on behalf of the student, and this is very true. We assume that when I've taught this, you should have eaten this, right? Learning as understanding, and learning as social cognition. Learning is best in groups. That's human learning, right? I'm not going to elaborate on this. You know all this from the literature. But moreover, learning is not only about economic lives. In the entire history of literature about educational policy and planning, basically it's an economic discourse. To be cynical, human beings are being transformed into human resources. You seldom talk about anything beyond human resources in education policies. And individuals are tortured until they confess to the labor market. That is what education is doing. I thought that was cynical when in the 70s, because even you fail in education, you can be in factories as blue collars, as manual, repetitive workers. But now, very few of such are left. We are still, the education is still very keen in weeding people out, as if they can, and once they're out, it's none of our business. If you were an educator, you said, I don't have the capacity, I don't have the time. But if you were a parent, you think very differently. And I think a nation should think of their students as their children. There are also other lives that requires learning. Now, you may say this learning could happen in family, in church, fine, but we have to plan. We have to make sure that we are not passing our bucks to other alternative institutions. Moral judgment, ethical, and so on and so forth. Right? All these are in the paper when they come to economic crisis, for example, when they come to politicking among parties. But more recently, many international organizations are talking about something very different. They think that when we think of our younger generation, when they graduate from our education system, they are facing a society which cannot be presumed to be peaceful and steady and secure. For example, unpredictable natural disasters, man-made accidents every day. Turn on a TV. Emerging disease and recurring epidemics, precarious economic crisis, unexpected political turmoil, like in Wall Street, like in London, like in Egypt, irresponsible politicking everywhere. You know it better. Hidden potentials of wars, and so on. Intolerable inequality. All these are happening. I don't think in my lifetime, I'm older, in your lifetime perhaps, you can see a peaceful and secure society. Are we preparing our younger generation for these? If we are not preparing for them and occupying their 24 hours apart from sleep on all this study and all knowledge contents? Are we being responsible? So rethink about learning. Is study equal to learning? Is scores equal to learning outcomes? Is teaching equal to learning? Very often when we say learning, we slip into instruction and thought that was learning. Are they? Curriculum, pedagogy, are teachers learning professionals or just our staff members? My mind boggles when I talk about staff management in schools. Yes, they have to be managed, but they are professionals. They're professionals. It's like in a hospital. You don't only talk about staff management in hospitals when you are dealing with doctors. School management is a learning leadership, as Michael also said. It's not a leadership about staff development. Resources, are all our resources going to learning environments? You see, I've been using learning deliberately everywhere here, not as a kind of a semantic kind of a beauty, is the reality. Because learning is the core business of education, and we have to ask ourselves, is it? Assessment is facilitating, and ICT, for example, is for liberating students. So we turn all these subjects, original formal curriculum, into these 8 key learning areas, and compress them into a smaller part of the whole curriculum. And then we try to see that students have all these learning experiences, give space for them. And so instead of a student facing many subjects, we surround them with all kinds of learning experiences. And it's like this. Study is important, essential still. I don't think we can get rid of study. But this course should not be indefinitely inflated to occupy their whole time. And so all these should happen. And all these are learning experiences. By the way, we all envy US for the freedom you've given to students, but now you seem to think that you are learning from us. I don't know why. So it used to be subjects and subjects and subjects, but now, apart from the subject, you have baseline competencies across subjects in school lives. If schools don't give them, they don't have it. And we have to compress the formal curriculum to give them to other learning experiences. And in Hong Kong, in our reform, we deliberately created a small window called liberal studies for teachers to decide what to teach, how to teach, and what activities to engage students in, and how to assess. I'll talk about that later if we have time. It causes a lot of kind of discomfort among teachers, and that is what we want. It's all about learning leadership, learning environments, the profession of learning, assessment for learning, and ICT for liberation of learners. Does it work? Example 1, school disparity. I remember Barry McGaw of OECD, after the PISA 2006, he came to Hong Kong and said, you are among the top achievers. However, your school disparity is also among the top. Right? And in 2009, the disparity dropped. It's not that they are equal, it's some kind of an average. And we try to understand. One thing that could explain is that the 15-year-olds, which PISA measures at 2009, were those who started their first year, grade 1, in year 2000. It's the year where we get rid of the end examination at primary school. Kind of a standard test. Right? The second example is Chinese language learning. In Pearls, which is one of the counterpart of TIMS in reading, in year 2001, we are the 14th. In 2006, we are the second, only next to Russia. And it's very much because of creative learning initiative. I can give you one example in one slide. You don't understand Chinese, I bet. This is called creative dictation. It used to be you give students a passage, go home, read it, recite it, regurgitate, and then I'll give you 100 marks. And 5 marks deducted from each mistake. Right? This is different. It started with a theme. This is spring. And the students are asked to write as many as possible, any phrase which is related to spring they can think of. The minimum is 6, and nobody did 6. All of them did many, many more. 3 marks for each, and there's no ceiling. There's no ceiling. So this guy got 159 marks. And there's no deduction for mistakes. This is the most difficult part for teachers. No punishment, but it makes C difference. So eventually, this is actually reflecting the students' mental lexicon. It's due to research. We remember, we build our vocabulary by associations. So allow them to associate. And it's a creation of vocabulary. It encourages exploration. Doesn't matter if you make mistakes, but try more. And therefore, they try to learn more, to write more. But immediately, the ability differentiation is also seen. The slow learners, the quick learners, and so on and so forth. Right? And these are the others about breakfast, about science. This is just a minute part of the whole reform about learning Chinese. It's a typical example how research in learning science translated into experiments, how the experiments are translated into, can be scaled up to more schools. Now there are more than 400 schools practicing this, and it causes the sea change in between 2001 and 2006. How? Very briefly, high conceptual underpinning and clear vision. I think that is what makes us sustain. Second is, it's a comprehensive and holistic and ecological approach. You can't just pick teachers' reform, pick curriculum reform, and leave other things alone. They are all intertwined. Undivided focus on learning. This is our kind of a conviction, almost religious, that everything has to be looked at from the learning perspective. Long lead time and meticulous preparation. It's 4 years for schools to prepare for the reform. Emphasis on school-based approach. I'll elaborate that more if I have time. That is, we deliberately leave room for teachers to decide what they want to do, given the umbrella framework. Otherwise, teachers will just wait for you, for your instructions from the central. Overview, society has changed. This is our belief. Learning as the core business, reform in the ecology, shift in paradigm, and investing in teachers' professionalism. Nonetheless, it's just a small step in the long journey. These are the references you don't read. Thank you.